Your mental health is not important. Just take care of everyone else.
You are a person that barely anyone can stand.
You'll never be anyone but just your mom. She's weak and emotional.
You don't need Okay, we're going to make this really intimate because this is video. Sound is not working well, so we're going to sit for now. Gather around. We can hear it. It's not very loud. We can hear it. It's a bit. You can hear it?
Just needs to be quiet.
I think that is.
We have a speaker if you would like.
Yes! You know what? When you have an issue, right here, I've got you covered. Welcome. All right, everybody give this one a round of applause. Sir, can you come up with your computer? It's moving double speed. It's playing this at double speed. Can you help? Is it your computer? Again, close it and open it again.
ओके ये लड़का
There we go.
Just read them. Okay. So the first one is you're not doing enough.
Your mental health is not important. Just take care of everyone else.
You are a broken person that barely anyone can stand.
You'll never be anyone but just a mom.
You're too weak and emotional.
You don't give your children enough time and love.
Your weight embarrasses your kids, and you should have better style.
No one will want you if you ever have to date again with a body like that.
You were too hard on Flynn last night. You're going to scar her. She's just a kid.
Hello.
I'm Rebecca. Nice to meet you. I'm Hannah. I'm Kira. Nice to meet you. Mine says you should have done more.
You can't be great at work or at home. You'll never be 100% at either. You'll always be mediocre.
My body is so ugly now that I've had a baby.
This is going to make me cry. Is that what you're trying to do?
Everybody will be better off without you.
Sometimes I think that too, honestly. Sometimes I think I could just get in my car and leave and it would just be so much better. And if they could just make it work without me.
How did that feel reading your negative thoughts to another person?
I feel like it's one thing to write them down for yourself and to accept them yourself, but to have somebody else hear them is totally different.
Vulnerable and like I want to say these things out loud to someone.
Yeah.
So that you could be like, you're crazy. And then be like, no, that's totally legit.
You know, when you hear someone else talking about all the things that they do, you know, we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves.
You're perfect. Perfect, just like you are.
What would you like to do with those cards in your hand?
Can I just rip them up now?
Should we rip them up?
Can I get rid of them forever?
Mine are really thick.
The universe has.
Awesome.
All right. So thank you all for coming. My name is Catherine Winch. I'm the author of Slay Like a Mother, and I am joined by my partner Lauren Fitzgerald and Claire Glisson. And I'm going to make my part of this short because we're going to turn it over to you guys and we're going to start having some fun conversations. But this is an epidemic around the world of the mental health and of mothers and women, and how hard we are on ourselves and how mean we are to ourselves. And I suffered with a similar mean voice inside my head for over 20 years. And it's really an exhausting way to live when you speak to yourself that way. All day, every day, but I am living proof that you can overcome it. And there's nothing inside of me that's not inside of you. You have all the tools and resources that you need to slay your self-doubt. And I'm so happy to bring this book to you all to help you do that. So you can read all about my personal journey in the book. I won't go into it now because we're a little short on time. So what I'm going to do is ask you all to be a little vulnerable. And there are 5 quotes from the book that are sprinkled around this room on these oversized Post-it pads. And I would love to invite you to go stand next to the one that you identify with the most.
Okay, so real quick so that you guys, the ones out loud. So this one says, I don't feel blank enough. This one, she's already identified as hers. My mouth says yes when I should be saying no. Another one, I set superhero expectations in a mortal's world.
What does that mean?
That one over there means I set these really high expectations that are absolutely impossible. This one back here, I posture like a pro, or in other words, I pretend like a pro, and then wonder why nobody sees that I need help. I pretend I'm fine, and I wonder then why everybody thinks that I'm fine. That one here. And then the voice in my head is the meanest girl I know. So stand by the one that you feel is just like, I get this.
What do you want in my own head?
What? And you really need the book. And you have it. Yes. Yes, exactly. So once you pick which one, it'll just kind of help us see which ones we need to spend the most amount of time on. Because we could spend hours on just one of these.
Should it be mothers? Can it be fathers?
It can be mothers.
What if you feel a little bit
That's great. That's totally fine. If there's the reality is these are all here because they're all things that mothers feel, and likely you can feel all of them. So this is just going to help us prioritize for today.
Okay, so what we're going to do, this is kind of like choose your own adventure for the workshop. So we're getting your advice on what we should talk about, because we could talk about all these things, but there's simply not enough time. So would love for you to spend 2 minutes just talking about this in your small group of why you feel this way, or just explain why you showed up at that poster. And then when we ring the bell, we'll bring everybody back together. Okay?
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't think I'm doing enough. And again, I might have the past I feel pretty confident.
What are you doing? मेरी बहन ले जाओ
Oh, were you the one who said that you were going to be well, you'll have to come back tomorrow and then you can leave the workshop. Maybe.
For me, it's time. When I say that, I know.
It doesn't mean that I'm not going to do what I want to do, but it's easy. I think I should be getting it. Just like this one, so before it's probably.
I know, I get it. I know.
नहीं मेरे को चाहिए
But then now I wish I had a magic wand. And then you don't it's not like I take a walk like I just got originated my personal doctor. She actually got given a post in the government. So I said, well, I'd like to congratulate my personal doctor for getting this position. Everybody on social media was like, at least you have a personal doctor. We don't have a personal doctor. So it was like, it's not so big. I was so fortunate that I grew up with a personal doctor. I remember the doctor.
All right, ladies, let's go back together. Let's talk about these things.
To bring back what was good at the Ross. And then
I know, ladies. So many things to talk about. All right, come on back to the middle, guys. We're going to talk about all these things, I promise. I love it. They say no. Talk about it.
I don't feel good enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not a mother enough, right?
Interesting. Okay, so we were saying that we just simply don't have time to go. There's an entire chapter in the book about each one of these topics, but it gives us a sense of where the energy is in the room and where you need the most help. So the most people were around setting unrealistic expectations and posturing or pretending like everything's perfect. So we'll spend a few minutes on each of those and take some questions, and then we're going to do a big group photo at the end, if you don't mind. Okay, so setting unrealistic expectations is one of my favorite chapters in the book. It's chapter 4. Because I believe that setting unrealistic expectations it's the root of all evil and all suffering. Right? Because I believe in having high expectations. You need to have high expectations. You're professionals, you're women, some of you are mothers, but there's a difference between high and too high. So I have very high expectations. I'm a very ambitious person, but I no longer have unrealistic expectations. And the reason that the unrealistic expectations expectations are so painful is because falling short feels like shit. And when your expectations are not achievable, you fall short every single day. And when you look at the mirror, then you just say you suck because you can't achieve your expectations. So in the book, I'll give you this tip. I would advise you to get your unrealistic expectations out of your mind and down on paper. It's something that my therapist had me do. So I want to read to you what my original expectations were for myself before doing this work.
Again, this is chapter 4.
So my therapist had me write down my expectations for motherhood and then my expectations for myself. So this was my expectations for motherhood.
What page?
74. My expectations for motherhood. It should be joyful, rewarding, fulfilling, easy. I've never heard anyone, my mother, my grandmother, other mothers, say that it's hard. So I think it's probably supposed to be pretty easy.
Really?
My expectations for myself. Be a good mother every hour of every day in everyone's eyes. Like setting myself up. So I want you, not right now, but I want you to write it down, because when you see that in your own handwriting, you can see that you're sabotaging your happiness. And I want you to look for words like every day, everyone's eyes, all the time. It's so exaggerated. Then, after years of therapy, I realigned and came up with more realistic expectations, and I invite you to do the same, and I'll just read these to you. My expectations for motherhood. I expect that it's going to be a shit show. I expect that I'm always going to need help, and I'm always going to ask for it. That is a wonderful expectation. And then my expectations for myself. I expect to do the best I can. I expect that I'm going to lose my patience and temper from time to time. I expect that every day is going to bring a challenge that I won't know how to deal with. I expect that I will not be perfect, and I am okay with that. So that's what I mean about realistic expectations. I'm even more ambitious now. So I want you to be ambitious. And that's often an excuse that we make for setting more realistic expectations, because we assume that we won't achieve what we want to achieve. And then one other story that I tell in the book is when my kids were younger and always fighting every night and just so exhausted after a long day of work, that as I was entering my home with my hand on the doorknob, I would say, I expect things to be messy tonight. I expect that. And then when my kids started fighting, I would say, I knew this was coming. Instead of expecting that somehow your children are not going to fight, or somehow you're a bad mom or dad because that's happening.
Traveling
It's just
for me. That's my thing. Traveling for me. So I travel a lot with my job, and somehow for the longest time I expected that when I would be gone from home, when I got back, the house would still be in perfect order. Like in my mind, somehow I pictured it should be this way. And yet every time I showed up from a business trip, my house looked like a tornado had torn it apart, and I lost my mind about it. But it happened every time. So I started with Catherine's point. As soon as my hand gets on the knob to walk into my house, I'm like, it's going to be a trash fire in there. And it is. But I don't get feisty about it anymore. Because it doesn't do anybody any good.
So the core of the book is 7 ways. I talked earlier this morning, if you were there, the book is about slaying this dragon of self-doubt. And the core of the book is 7 ways you're feeding this dragon and how to stop. And the number 1 way is this one. It's the first reason, it's the most important, and you will see the most dramatic change in your life by setting more realistic expectations. Make sense? Okay. Yes.
Quite a few questions just there. My daughter just turned 8, so you know.
Mine too.
Mine too.
Yes.
So we just in the middle of the cycle.
Yes. I do.
I
8 years old. 8-year-old daughter. Yes, we all understand. Yes. Okay.
2 questions. One is, why we don't want to set superior expectations? We do have some expectations from the self, because typically people say that don't cross the bridge until you come to it. But suddenly when you come to this maternity bridge, you realize you never prepared for it. And just as you say, everything, no other mother complained that it was difficult to work, and so you just think that like everything else in life, until 29-30 years of age, everything else will continue to fall in place, which it doesn't. Now all this trash, all this, whatever tornado that happens at home, so, leaks a lot of your time. We
which again keeps into whatever, even if whatever expectations you have set for yourself is realistic, but that pulls you down so much that you underperform at like everything else because you're always folding clothes.
Yeah.
Or you're stepping over Legos or whatever, right? So that is one thing. And the second and the slightly bigger question is that while going through this journey of suddenly realizing, oh shit, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, and it's clinical, and then going through therapy and realizing that whatever happens and whatever I'm feeling now is more reactionary. The seed of all of that was germinated when I was 7, until 7, 8 or 10 years old, because it's all childhood, whatever.
Oh yeah, a lot of it.
Having realized that, now I think I'm overtly conscious as to what is the ratio of my yes to no to my child. If she is asking, am I always saying no? That will affect her, What if I am teaching her pleasure is guilty? What if I am saying, no chocolate and I'm instead of, stopping her? So I think my parenting has become so conscious that it has again backfired.
Yeah. I mean, it's called ruminating. I mean, it's just, you just do.
Yeah, but at the same time, you don't want to scar your child like emotionally. It's okay if they go without meal for a day or, hog on junk food or whatever. That's fine.
Yeah.
But emotionally, having grown that appreciation for mental health, how can you compromise being a parent?
Yeah, I would say that the first thing that comes to mind is it's a great point that you brought up. My research shows that 75% of the time, a woman's self-doubt was born when she was in adolescence. So it's not born when you become a mother. It's born in teenage years or younger, and it's a scar. Something hurt you, cut you deeply, affected you. Could have been abuse, could have been neglect, could have been somebody making fun of you because you pronounced the word wrong, something. And so if you're aware of that, we can help our children be aware of that. The final chapter in the book is called Raising Dragon Slayers, and it's how to teach specifically our daughters. And so part of that is stopping worrying about whether you're giving them the right food or they're eating enough vegetables, and have more conversations about the mental health side. There's this thing called self-doubt. There's this dragon. Has yours been born yet? But just having those open conversations, but you have to learn how to slay your dragon first, because you can't teach your child to do something that you haven't conquered yet. The one other thing that I'll share that's related to your question is in I think it's chapter 3, I talk about the difference between struggling and suffering. And motherhood and life is a struggle. It is hard. It has always been hard. It will always be hard for everyone. For everyone. So, but when we think we are the only ones struggling, and everybody else has it figured out, and we're a trash fire, then we slip into suffering. And the entire point of this book is that your goal is to struggle and not to suffer. So if you're struggling as a mother, you win.
That's how it is.
That's struggling. Everybody does, but when you think you're the only one, you dip down, and that's where your dragon lives and attacks you. Okay, so we'll go on to the wearing the mask, posturing. Another one of my favorite chapters is chapter 6. And I usually say that the clue, if you want to know if you're wearing this mask of motherhood, where we're like, everything's fine, it's fine, I don't need any help, and then inside we're like, oh, I'm dying. Is you're wearing a mask if you answer questions twice. Once out loud and once in your mind. So if somebody says, how was the beach vacation with 2 young kids? And inside you're like, it sucked. I'm so tired. We still have sand everywhere. Takes kids to the beach in the sand. And inside you're like, it was awful. And then outside you say, oh, it was just so magical and the sunset and who loves So start to pay attention to that. It's a double life is what it is.
Think about it. Think about the last time somebody asked you about something like that, about your family life. Think about the things that you said in your head, and then you somehow smiled and said it was great, and you lied.
Sorry. One thing I used to say to them was, I told the children, remind me next time to say no for the holiday.
Yeah, see? Vacations with young kids.
I'm paying money.
It's the same, like, meltdowns and issues, just in a different location.
Yes.
That's all it is. Like, have you ever seen, like, pictures of people at Disney World? Kids are still melting down Excuse me, Mickey Mouse is there.
That's right.
Doesn't matter. They're still losing their minds, and they paid a ton of money to be there, so their kids could melt down just in a prettier location.
And you know what Catherine said is a double world, right?
Yeah.
Because I have young children, and our ages are too far apart. But instead of worrying now, when I go on holiday with them, I become a child. Right? I kind of get frenzy when they get frenzy, so they go down.
Yeah.
And,
she's listening to mine too.
yes, because you're so worked up that you end up not enjoying the holiday and then enjoying the holiday. So you want me to carry you 24 hours of the day, and I'm like, Mommy's tired, Mommy's tired. And that way, yes, I'm worked up.
Yeah.
But I don't lose all the fun.
You don't. And that's a great authoritative. So how do they take the mask off though? Like, what is something that you can do to not be that person? Because I struggle with this, by the way. I'm always, I'm fine, I'm totally fine.
But you know you're not fine.
I know, I'm fine. I don't need a nap. I said this today. I'm so jet lagged, you guys. And she's like, do you need a nap? I'm like, I'm fine. I'm fine. And inside I'm dying.
So the one more thing I'll say, and I'll give you one tip, is that here's the deal: that other people might not know that you're wearing a mask because it's a mask, but you know you're wearing a mask. And every time you lie and say you're fine, you are telling your soul that the opinion of the person you are speaking to, their opinion of you matters more than your truth. So don't think that it doesn't affect you. So you might be pulling it off in front of other people, pulling off having the mask on, but you're telling your soul that your truth doesn't matter, it's not worthy, it's that people will reject you if you say it out loud. So you need to start saying this stuff out loud. That's my advice. And so ask, if you're timid, you're afraid to do it in the beginning, ask another mother, hey, what's hard for you? What are you struggling with? Instead of like, how are you? And it becomes so superficial and shallow, say, what's your biggest struggle in life? And we often think about motherhood as being competitive, like, I'm great, no, I'm great, I'm great. When you say, I'm struggling, another mother says, you think you're struggling? And another mother's like, oh my gosh. Like, we always tell the story. And one mom's like, I forgot to send lunch, to school with my kid. And the next mom's like, I forgot to pick my kid up from school.
There's always a mom who's made a bigger mistake.
It's like a ripple effect.
It is.
But you have to throw the rock in by saying that you're not perfect, you don't have it all figured out.
It gives everybody permission to take the mask off.
And it'll give the person that you're speaking to the permission. But one thing I will caution you on, this happened to me, is that I wore a mask for 20 years. Like, I don't need help, I don't need help, I don't need help. And when I started taking the mask off and saying, people are like, how are you? And I was like, not really happy. They couldn't believe it. And it was rejected, and I was actually shamed for it many times.
Said you were crazy, right?
Oh, you've seen your vice
You have everything. What do you mean you're not well?
Happy about? I was like, I don't know, but I'm not. And our people would say, don't be silly. And I thought, I'm a human being, I'm really struggling, and I just said something really scary out loud, and you think I'm making a joke.
Exactly.
So just be prepared that you don't need that response back. Okay.
That's the 1 minute mark.
Can I just say something?
Say it.
Everybody's smoking age. I have a 16-year-old, and at 16,
Oh,
whether they're
bless
coming
you.
or going, I have no idea.
Yep.
But I've reached a stage where I've realized that the best thing, and I know this is going to sound weird, is just have no expectations of anything.
With
And the reason
teenagers?
it's not about teenagers, it's about everything, whether it's life, work, whatever. And the reason being is when you put an expectation. So, for example, if you say you're going into a job and you know that there's a promotion, and your immediate boss asks you, so how much do you think, what's going to make you happy as a figure? And right now you're 50,000, you say, if I could get 75,000, I think I'm set. And then your paycheck comes in. And
Publisher, and they're like 22, and we were like 1,000? And she was like 100, and we were like, oh shit. And because in our mind we had jumped to 22,000, and when she said 2,200, and I was telling somebody that story, and they said, you completely negated that 2,000 people across the United States bought this book, but you lose the joy. But you're like, I thought they were going to say
And P.S. the publisher said that was astronomical. Like, that was excellent in the first week. But, yeah, that is, expectations are the thief of joy, my friends.
Yes.
It's true.
Can we take a, we're almost out of time. So can we take a big group photo?
Yes.
Okay.
And
And
you're
grab
right,
a book if you don't have one.